Perspective now from Asher Cohen, a forensic engineer who evaluates damage to residential and commercial buildings, and architect Kobe Karp, whose firm specializes in high-rise residential developments and is based in Miami. Asher, we just showed those photos there, taken 36 hours before this collapse. What did you see in that?
Yeah, we saw spalling, and again, which is well documented. We saw significant spalling of some of the, what looked like a beam below the, what I understand is the south end of the pool structure below that. And we saw evidence of spalling in other photographs in that inspection report. Again, it was noted, and it has been noted continuously, that the spalling alone doesn't explain this, at least to the degree that it was. And there's a real mystery here, and obviously what we expect as pieces get removed from the site and they re-examine those, test them, send them to laboratories, we'll have a better idea. We really hope, of course, sooner than later that we have a more clear idea as to what factors contributed to this.
Kobe, what does your eye tell you about those photos? And again, a bit more of reporting according to the contractor, a lot of standing water, an unusual amount of standing water in that area.
I read the report, and the water is very, very concerning. And in the report is actually a sentence that states that maybe this event is actually in other locations in the building. So for example, if the waterproofing has failed where the pool deck is, has the waterproofing also failed where the roof is? What happens then is with the connections over time fail. And this event did not happen in the past 24 hours or the past 24 months. It took time to be done. And nobody was working on the building in the middle of the night. So if the event really happened in the past 24 hours, the past 24 months, the failure could have been on top, it could have been in the middle, or it could have been on the bottom. Nobody really knows. It's purely speculation.
The photos that we saw in the Miami Herald actually are from a spot that didn't collapse. The collapse happened in a different spot, but there is one sentence in this article which makes you wonder. The question is, was that more widespread across that whole level? If it had been, how much of a concern would that be to you?
Yeah, well, again, it was. I mean, we saw evidence of spalling throughout the parking garage. Again, it's well documented that at this point, we recognize there was spalling. To the extent that we saw below the south end of that pool structure, maybe not to that extent. But again, we did see evidence of that in that 2018 report. As Kobe said, this is something that occurs over many, many years. When we see failures, we see that progressive failures of concrete structure give you plenty of time to understand, hey, we have a serious issue. What's so puzzling here is the fact that it happened so rapidly with a lot of engineering eyes on it, at least over the last several years. There's been plenty of experts who have come by, and we just don't understand what other factors at this point.
Well, what about that, Kobe? When does it go from major structural damage, as we saw in the 2018 report, to major structural damage you need to fix today?
Look, this building is not old. This building is young. I was in high school when this building was being built. What's interesting here is when we design buildings, we design everything sloped to drains so that the water runs off, especially here where the water has salt in it, has salinity. We try to get the water away and drained away from the structure, from the steel, as fast as possible. But like the engineer said, if this really was a waterproofing issue where the water continuously was able to percolate into the concrete and into the steel, then it's like a cancer. It grows and keeps on growing and expanding. The point of arrival could have been someplace from the top, could have been someplace at the bottom. We just don't know. But this goes against anything that we do in maintaining these buildings. We need to maintain these buildings, and if we do not maintain the waterproofing, we don't maintain the structure, it's like not maintaining ourselves. We will fail.
At one point here, I mean, it's going on. The search and rescue effort is going on right behind this building that we're seeing right here. The mayor of Miami-Dade County pointed out, yes, it's a search and rescue operation, but it's also an evidence gathering operation right now. They're trying to piece it together so they can analyze forensically what's happening. One of the things that some engineers who have looked at the collapse, video of the collapse, and also looked at the different pictures that we've seen, like the ones today, told the New York Times and the Miami Herald they're of the mind that this collapse started at the bottom, maybe in the garage or the pool deck, the bottom level. What do you make of that? How do these new photos, for instance, contribute to that theory to you?
I don't know if the new photos, certainly the big piece of evidence is when we look at that video, we can see that that central portion of the building collapses, and we look at that column support at the south end of that central portion, and it appears, given what we can see, and again, remember, we're just looking at the south side, thing important to remember is, what if we had video from the north side?
Right.
You know, that's the limiting factor here. Mind you, that we have video alone is telling. But I strongly suggest to everyone that what we will do is, when we examine all the information, the physical evidence, we're going to start to see better, much more clearly, what specifically, what factors, and multiple factors likely, contributed to this issue. And again, you know, it's not to say that we're not looking at corrosion, you know, trying to say, oh, spalling happens, it's not something that to be concerned. Of course it's a concern, but spalling alone and the extent that we're seeing here, it's still a puzzle. We really have to look at it, and we have to examine more.
What would it cause, a column, if it was that column or a column like that, to collapse on itself? What could cause that?
The weakening of the joint. It's like we're standing on two legs, but if one leg, if I get a nail in my knee and I cannot stand on that, I can try to balance, but when I'm a building, I cannot. I have to follow the motion of the weakness, the direction of the failure. And what Asher is talking about is how the building collapsed onto itself, yet the front facade was standing. And then it moved back. Now, the interesting thing is, as pure speculation, other people are asking me, Colby, how could it be that I don't see any material of the roof material that was being placed on the existing building, the building that's still standing? Yet, if it was placed, where was it placed? Was it placed on the building that failed? And if so, where was it placed? Was it placed on the joint where it failed? And so it gets back to what Asher is saying. Some folks are saying, no, the failure is down below. Some people saw a sinkhole. Some people are saying maybe the materials were not spread around and they were loaded at where people thought was the safest, which is by the shear wall. And maybe that's where the weakest point was, because the water membrane was not protecting it for years. And maybe that's where the failure was. And then you start to look at it from a different perspective, like you said.
A combination of things.
Yeah, maybe you need to look from the north rather from the south. And it's like an accident, and four people on four corners see the same accident in four different ways.
You know, one of the questions is, as we're hearing from our reporter, we're hearing from you and other engineers who took a tour of the building. I talked to a guy who looked at it last year. They saw things, but nothing they saw then was alarming to them then. What do you think the chances are, Asher, that one of the things that emerges from this is that people like you designing these buildings, look at things differently, start to see evidence like this, and maybe worry more now because of it? Do we need to change the way we look at things?
It goes without saying. We're absolutely going to look at things with more scrutiny, and especially once we start to uncover things. We have a tried and true process in the forensic world where we examine all of the factors that go into whatever it is that failed, and we put together a hypothesis, and we examine that and test it. Now we'll have contributing information, significant information, as we learn what happened, that absolutely will be incorporated into the engineering community, the architectural community, and the inspection community as a whole. What we see from moving forward from here, I hope, will be improvements, and this never happens again.
Yeah,
so absolutely.
I mean, I think the people living in these thousands of buildings that ring the coast of Florida and up the East Coast too, they want to know. I mean, they're looking at things differently too. They appreciate the work you're doing. I appreciate you joining us tonight. Thank you both very much.
Thank you for your time.